This podcast contains spoilers, so listen at your own risk or call back after you've watched the movie.
You know who you call. Leave a message. Maybe they'll call you back. Then again, maybe they won't.
We're having ourselves quite a little game of phone tag here.
Ring, ring, ring. I usually get this guy's answering machine.
I'll call you right back.
If you're there, please pick up the phone. I really want to talk to you.
I check my fucking messages every day when I come home from work. My answering machine, zero. I got a blinking light.
All I have to do is pick up this phone right here, inform the cinema, and your plan's kaput.
No, I ain't got no phone. I had to pull, because people calling all the time, and who needs the aggravation, right? Interruptions.
Hey man, walking along a busy road here, so hopefully no noise pollution. Just on my way to the cinema. Very rare cinema trip for me these days. So I'm trying to squeeze in a little voice message queue on my walk there. I'm making good time. I'm not running late or anything, and Lord knows there'll be half an hour of trailers, so not really under any kind of time pressure here, but I also don't quite know which way I'm going, so I've never gone this way before, so should be off this busy road in a second. Gorgeous sunny weather here. It's early October. I'm walking along in a t-shirt. I think Irish people are forever condemned to comment on stuff like that rather than ever take it for granted. And I am in the early days, I guess about almost 1 week into Spooktober, my annual watching of a horror film every day throughout October. God, it really is noisy here. I hope this is coming through. I know I've got to take a left-hand turn now down some footpath, but I'm not spotting it. Hopefully it's just around this corner. So anyway, I watched the film Smile a couple of years ago in Spooktober. And as you know, I like horror a lot. There was a time when I was very snobby about horror, and I was quite dismissive of your sort of mainstream kind of pack them into the cinema type horror movies that come out constantly. And over the years, my frosty heart has melted to them. And at this point, I'd say almost every brand of horror, almost every sort of subgenre and level of mainstreamness, if you will, has found its way into my viewing. So I'll pretty much check out every major horror film that people are excited about. And one of those a few years ago was the film Smile, which I think kind of, it has, as you know, I'm sure you've seen it, it has that like very compelling image of someone just doing this really fucking disturbing smile, not into camera, but at the protagonist. And as soon as the trailer for that dropped with those like smile images, people are like, oh shit, what the fuck is this? It kind of generated a bit of buzz pretty quickly, came out, people watched it, people liked it. I caught up with it in Spooktober maybe 2 years ago, at a guess, and I liked it quite a bit. So I didn't think it was amazing or anything, but I thought, that was decent, that was worth watching. So when Smile 2 came around, and the word through the grapevine was that it was like a worthy sequel, maybe even better, I was like, I'm sticking that in the Spooktober for sure. So a couple of nights ago, it came up. Now, I can't remember the circumstances, but for some reason, I had to start watching it pretty late, like much later than I'd like. And I've been very, very stretched lately, as ever, but lately for sure. And I found myself with a migraine watching it, and I'm very tired. So I watched it across 2 nights, which is always, it's a bad way to watch any movies, and it's particularly a bad way to watch a horror movie, because it's all so much about like being locked into the immersion of it. And yeah, when you split it up a bit, that's not really the case anymore. But anyway, I've watched it, and I think you have seen it. in the last few days as well. So I thought I'd send you over a voice note with my thoughts. Now, when the movie started, I think I just got through the opening studio logo before I paused the movie. I was like, wait a minute, I haven't a fucking clue what happened in Smile. So I went to YouTube, and luckily for me, someone had uploaded like a 2-3 minute video. So I didn't have to watch some like ridiculous Smile ending explained 45-minute essay or something. No, a nice succinct little 2 to 3 minute recap, which combined with my memory brought me fully up to speed. And yeah, there were a few important things, important pieces of information in that had definitely gone from my memory and helped me kind of get into this movie a bit more quickly. One, I'd forgotten that in the climax of Smile, you actually get to see the monster, the demon or whatever. So I had that kind of concrete in my head, but no, this is a single physical demon entity. That's context that you have if you've recently watched Smile, but if you've either not seen it for ages or you've never seen it, I think for a long time watching Smile 2, it can be completely unclear what she's up against or what they're up against, the characters in this movie. So that was one thing. The other thing is it clarified the mechanics of how it works. It kind of gets you under its spell, and then eventually after, a week or whatever, it makes you kill yourself in front of someone else, thereby infecting the other person with it, however it works. Okay, I've run into a junction here. Let me, oh, I think, yeah, okay. Hopefully I'm going correctly here. So yeah, the movie starts 6 days after the previous one. Kyle Gallner, who's popped up in a lot of cool genre films lately, including the first Smile, of course. He's the connective tissue with the first Smile movie in terms of like actual actors. And we get this cool little, very kinetic crime scene type movie, bit, whatever you will call it, a little interlude. The first Smile movie I remember thinking was really bleak. Like really, it's all like social workers and hospital, like it's very grim. And hang on, have I taken a wrong turn? Let me pause this voice note. Oh, there's a lovely little squirrel here beside me. Let me pause this voice note and get in Google Maps and then come back to you in a second. Okay, looks like I'm still on the right track here. So anyway, yeah, the first Smile movie was very dark and bleak and grim, and like it took place in really depressing environments. That's my memory of it. And so the first movie is kind of like connecting that up before we get into like the pop star glitz of Smile 2, set in like, I think he's a police officer, that character, which I only know from watching that little recap on YouTube. So he has the ability to identify these like perfect candidates to take on the curse, because they're such like evil people. He'll kill one of them in front of the other, and Bob's your uncle. But unfortunately for him, they both end up dead, and the curse is passed to a more or less innocent bystander who just happens to be in the room hiding, this drug dealer who, I forget the name of the actor. We've seen him in what was the movie recently, Companion. I think I've seen him pop up in a few things in recent years. Yeah, he's there. And curiously, I don't think Gallner actually is killed. So I wonder if that's like your sort of protect the sequel, like let's keep all options open. If there's a legacy character, let's try and keep him alive. Or they certainly don't do that with the protagonist of this film by the end of it. But anyway, we get that little scene, and then drug dealer dude scurries off, And then I think at that point we switched to Naomi Scott, who's the star of this film, who's in every scene thereafter, and who delivered. I mean, I don't know if I've actually seen her in a movie. I've been aware of her because she's been in a couple of movies that were very highly publicized, like Aladdin, Power Rangers, Charlie's Angels. These are the type of films that I don't watch, but, you know, just being a member of the public, they absolutely drown you in the media campaign. So I've known of her existence, but I don't think I've actually seen her in anything. She is phenomenal in this movie. She's absolutely incredible. I have to think that if horror was taken seriously, that she would surely have been under some degree of awards consideration. I mean, I don't know about Academy Award, but like if this was a drama or something, and maybe if she was a slightly more famous actress, it's hard to see how she wouldn't have got an Academy Award nomination. But yeah, she's obviously, it's great when you have like the lead actor in a horror movie managing to sell all the crazy shit that's going to go on. But yeah, she does it excellently. And I think her character and the whole sort of concept of this movie is the perfect twist on the first smile. And by that I mean the first smile, like I said, it was in very troubling, dark, depressing territory that it took place, and it really benefited from that. But that meant it wasn't very fun. Like, you know, you get a certain amount of fun out of like the cool imagery and stuff like that, but it's a bit of a downer vibe movie. And this movie, because of the mental health stuff she's going through and the things that are tormenting her, addiction and fame and stuff like that, which is very, very well displayed in this movie, because of all that like really heavy shit, it has got that. It's not just like a complete tonal departure from the first Smile movie. It's got loads of that, like, these movies are about serious, traumatic, heavy, horrible circumstances. But then because she's this giant Taylor Swift style pop star, you also get just so much pop energy and so much like glossy flashing lights. I was thinking of the movie Trap, and for one, this is like the anti-Trap in like how much of a net positive the pop star is. Now granted, in Trap it's a supporting character that shouldn't even have a line of dialogue, never mind become the star of the movie in the third act. But in this one, she is the main character, but also the music's way better, the performances are way better, the way it's filmed and everything. It's just like the fact that this is about a pop star is like such a great, unique asset to this movie. And I like the idea of taking a franchise, a horror franchise, could be any franchise, it could be an action franchise, but horror franchise in this case, and going, what completely unique setting and world could we put this one in that would also still completely fit what we, like what this franchise does and what it does best. I'm outside the cinema now, I'm pacing around. The trailers kick off in 15 minutes, which I guess means the movie's in 45 minutes. There is a pub across the road, which I'm eyeing up, but I think I'm just going to stick to this voice notes. Who knows when I'm going to get that out. So, yeah, I think she's amazing. I think the music that she performs is really good, but the score to this movie is absolutely incredible. I would say like one of the best horror scores I've ever come across. I looked up the composer afterwards. He's done loads of English TV, and I think his most high-profile job, which when you know it, it makes total sense, is White Lotus. White Lotus and this both play with those like weird, eerie noises. It very, very much like individual sounds rather than one big like wall of sound or whatever. But this particularly, like as soon as those like eerie kind of like vocal pads or whatever they are kick in when the credits start, and then just the whole way through the movie, the score in this is absolutely incredible. And I remember liking Smile, but I don't think I had really sensed the potential of what this director could do. I think, and I'll get into things that don't work for me about this movie soon, but just sort of sticking to the compliments for now. This is an incredibly well-directed movie, I would say. I think he's an absolutely phenomenal director, and I'm looking forward to a long career of him directing other genres and, of course, horror movies. So, yeah, like really every single, kind of like, when you're watching an Edgar Wright movie or something where you're just like, it doesn't matter if it's someone like closing a book and turning off their light switch, or if it's a car chase, you know that every second of footage that you're going to see is going to just be fun and maximalist, but also like respecting the tone that needs to be struck to keep it tense. It does, even though it's got so much flashy editing and filmmaking, it's never jeopardizing the fact that it's a horror movie. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I really liked it. Now, there's a few things that are like personal parts of my experience with this movie. I love horror movies. It's my favorite genre, and my favorite experience that I can have with a movie is to be scared by a movie. Like, that is the absolute white whale for me of cinema, is being scared by a movie. And there's, like anyone, there are things that scare me more, things that scare me less. And I'm generally not scared of supernatural stuff. If I don't believe in the thing in the real world, then it's very unlikely that I'm going to be scared of it in a movie. Not impossible. There's definitely cases where I have been, but I'm much less inclined to be scared of something if I don't actually think that thing is real in real life. Now, I can be sort of convinced that it's real in a film sense. You watch Jurassic Park, you're not like, no fucking way. Like, you buy into it. You're like, I accept for these 2 hours that this is reality. But there's a different level of terror when I'm watching like a home invasion movie or something, and it's just like, I don't know, I can relate to the stakes so much more. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I also am generally not a fan of someone going crazy movies. Like, it's all in their head, like they're hallucinating, they're scared, and they're confronting all these scary things, but it's visions and hallucinations and stuff like that. I don't like that in any genre. It's usually horror, but whatever genre it happens to be in, it's something I find frustrating. I don't find it scary, and I also don't find it compelling. So the fact that I enjoyed this movie, and I thought this movie was really good, and I'm really excited for Smile 3, which will obviously be the same elements, Smile 3 is not going to be a home invasion movie, is testament to like how good this film is. But I did fall short of being scared other than jump scares, which are like, I don't even count that as being scared. That's like just someone running up behind you and going, boo! And like when you thought you were alone, it's like, that's not really scared. Scared is like apprehension and tension and what is, terrified of what's going to come next. The jump scare thing, I mean, this film does what a lot of films do, which is quiet, loud. It's got a lot of uses of loudness, like a hell of a lot of uses of loudness, and they are effective as jump scares and as keeping you on edge and keeping you edgy, but it's sort of less my like holy grail of horror movies. Holy grail for me is like just someone walking around in space and I'm just like, Jesus fucking Christ, like, it doesn't have that tension for me. But what I will say is, if you're going to do a movie that is someone's crazy, I mean, she's not crazy because obviously these are real, like, it's a real demon that's controlling what she's seeing. But, for want of a better word, someone's crazy and they're seeing stuff. They're having like all these hallucinations. If you're going to do that, this film comes up with so many novel and cool ways to run that gag over and over again. Like, for example, and I think this would probably stand out for most viewers as like one of the better moments in the movie, she goes to the meet and greet thing, and we get 2 scares in that. Well, we kind of get 3. One is the sort of like anxious uncomfortableness of just how she feels just being there in the first place. You know what kind of headspace she's in, and so as soon as you just show an environment like that where it's all like fans and flashing photographs and people wanting autographs and just shitloads of people clamoring for her, and her having to pretend she's in a completely different vibe than she is, you could argue that that's already just a scare, like right from the get-go, on a sort of social anxiety level. Then you've got the scare of the creepy guy who gets her to sign his t-shirt, his yellow t-shirt, and just like, he's like your classic kind of like stalker, obsessive type character. Great movie called I Think We're Alone Now, by the way. Great documentary about 2 stalkers. And yeah, that's a fascinating world as well. This movie just lightly touches on it. I think there's enough iconic, horrible like elements to celebrity life that you can touch on quite a lot of them when you're making a movie about a celebrity, and we kind of, as a public, we just sort of know what we're being shown. Anyway, they show us that guy, which is like very unnerving and horrible, and rings very true, and I guess for me it hits home more than the supernatural stuff, because like those motherfuckers really exist, and they will just like break into your hotel room and shit. And then you've got a little girl who's like the Smiler, which is the literal demon that she's in, which we know, and she's like, no, I understand. So you got those 3 scares, but then that's all just like foreplay to the actual scare of when she has that hallucination in her hotel room or condo or whatever it is, I'm not really sure, where she smashes the bottle, and then she goes to get the mop, and then she sees all of his clothes laid out in the hallway, and then we see him naked down the far end of the hallway, just still, and then he's just completely still, and then when he starts running, that's super scary, and like, that's masterfully crafted stuff, and the film does that so many times. There's obviously the one with the choreographers sort of tracking her movements through her apartment thing, and yeah, I think, like I said, it's not like, if you describe this movie to me, I'd be like, I ain't watched that. Like, it's just not for me. I hate that kind of stuff. But he's so inventive and such a great visual storyteller, and comes up with so many cool, iconic images. Like the argument scene Clacky is in the car prior to the car crash, where the camera's just sort of spinning round and everything. Like, he's such a brilliant director. Like, he's so good at giving you the experience of a moment in a way that's like really striking and really works. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a good thing when you watch a movie where it's like, not my type of movie, but loved it because they did it so well, you know? What else to say about this one? When I watched the 2-minute recap on YouTube of Smile 1, I was reminded of something that had kind of gone from my brain over the years, as had more or less everything about Smile 1. Even the face of the protagonist was a new introduction to me on YouTube last night, or 2 nights ago. But one thing that I was reminded of was that the first movie is a sort of, I don't want to necessarily say detective, but it's a mystery movie. It's a get to the bottom of what this is, find people, interview people, piece the puzzle together kind of movie. And this movie isn't really that. There's another supporting character who's kind of done that work for her, where she doesn't actually need to do any investigation or unraveling or get to the bottom of it. And maybe that's because it's a sequel and they don't want to like waste the audience's time of watching someone put together shit that the audience should already know. So they introduce this other character and they introduce him quite well with these like text messages that seem aggressive initially. Again, like everything in this movie is so well done, but they bring in this other character who knows the full thing, who can just do an exposition dump halfway through the movie, and he's like, don't even worry about like trying to figure out how to beat this thing or understand it or anything. I'm taking care of all of that, so you can just be doing cool hallucination sequences. I'm gonna sort you out. And then we get the end of the movie where she has that, she's in her hospital room, I guess, or is it like rehab? I'm not sure. I think it's a hospital. And she has this chat with her mother, and her mother knows, you need to get on this stage tonight, or otherwise we're throwing everything away. And I think, I mean, maybe it's a little open to interpretation, but for me, it's right at that moment that the hallucination starts. In other words, when she kills her mother, that's the start of that kind of 15 minutes or whatever it is, hallucination. And everything we see in that sequence is hallucination. And of course, loads of other stuff throughout the movie has been hallucination. Like, it's revealed at the end that she's never actually met her best friend over the whole course of the movie. So every time we've seen that character on screen, it's been a hallucination. So, you know, you can completely decide for yourself how much of the movie is a hallucination. I guess you could say 100% if you wanted, which may be accurate. It's not any less accurate than any other reading, but certainly when she kills her mother onwards, that's all like her little escapade to try and go into that freezer and die and all that. That's all just completely in her head. And then we get on stage and she kills herself in front of thousands of adoring fans. I mean, certainly the implication, whether they're going to retcon this in the sequel or not, I don't know, but the implication is that she's now infected every one of them, and they're all in the smile virus or whatever. But yeah, had a really, really good time with this. So many good moments, so impressed by the lead actress. Such a fun, novel horror movie. And I think I might wander into the cinema now. I usually reticent to go in for the trailers because I just don't want to watch a whole bunch of commercials and stuff, but I'm in a bit of a commercial park here where I guess I could go bowling for 20 minutes, but yeah, there isn't really much to do around here, so I might just have my seat and throw on a podcast. But yeah, let me know what you thought of this one.
Hey man, nice hearing your voice note there about Smile 2. I'm going to call this voice note chalk and cheese, because hearing you speak about what I consider middle of the road horror movies, it's kind of like when I'm listening to somebody talk about middle of the road action movies. It's kind of like, yeah, I just like, it's great that you get so much joy out of these things, but for me, there's so much of that that's not there at all. And it's kind of like, I feel like you could watch a lot of these type of movies and get so much more that I will never get from these type of movies, because I'm just not the target audience. I'm not the guy, and I like horror in general, not as much as you by a country mile. I was very primed for getting into this horror season. I've made a horror section on my Plex. I kicked off horror season a little bit early with Weapons and Together last week. In the Dark, by your recommendations, I really liked Smile 1. It was one of the few supernatural movies that scared me genuinely. The other one was The Conjuring, which I watched during the daytime and it still managed to scare me. I think I also watched Smile during the daytime and it still managed to scare me. So you can imagine my newfound nighttime, late at night viewing expectations, and especially having loved Smile 1 as far as a genre that I'm not particularly a fan of, and that's supernatural horror. My expectations were low because I think sequels in general, I'll put my guard down. I saw the trailer almost years ago, it seems now. It was promoted quite a bit, and I knew it's about a pop star. I had forgotten a lot of the information, and I just can't connect with the level of enjoyment you get from these movies and the level of enjoyment I get from these movies. Now, to be clear, I didn't dislike this movie by any means. I found it fine. There's plenty to talk about, and there's plenty to admire, but there's just so much that I heard in your voice note that I just, not to say baffled by, but because I know that you love horror, but it's more like I just didn't see that. A lot of those things that you enjoy in this movie, I don't, and found it a negative. I do agree that he's a very good director, and he shoots a hell of a shot in this movie. Just to start off with your voice note, you mentioned that Gallner doesn't die. He gets run over by a car, no? We see his leg and his body absolutely spread across tire screeching when he jumps out that window. So unless they retcon that as a hallucination, then he is dead. The opening sequence was absolutely fantastic. And I do want to see this director do stuff where he moves away from horror. You probably disagree and would love him to stay in this genre for Smile 3. But that opening sequence is so impressive. It's like the climax of Narc or the climax of The Departed. I don't mean the Mark Wahlberg showing up again. I mean everything that leads up to the elevator scene in Leonardo DiCaprio. It's that level of flair and that level of intensity. Really like that. So I can understand that if some of those traits are transferred into a genre that you really like, then I suppose I can see what you're seeing. Yeah, so first of all, did not find this movie scary at all. Found this movie way too long. I found Naomi Scott's performance really distracting and really took me out of it. And again, this is maybe something that I'm not seeing in the context of your love for the genre, because there's all these horror starlets and these iconic final girls doing things that are brilliant acting in the sense of the genre, but for me, I found it really, really distracting anytime she was acting scared or anytime she was acting terrified. It was like Zendaya in Dune 2, where I guess now you're acting disgruntled. Oh, I guess now you're acting angry at Timothée Chalamet. Probably her looking straight at the camera quite often didn't help, but yeah, it just kept on taking me out of it. It didn't allow me to get scared because I could see someone acting scared, and I do mean acting scared in terms of I could see the moment where she is putting on the performance of a scream queen or a just something that's iconic in a way that some people will appreciate, but people like me will just be distracted by it. It constantly made me realize I was in a movie and shouldn't be scared because it's now time for the main actress to act scared. And yeah, I think her performance, if anything, was one of the main reasons why it made it less scary for me. I don't have a stopwatch out, but the hallucinations, it wasn't so much at the end of the movie. I think there was a significant portion of the end of this movie that maybe it's just because it was dragging for me, but of course it's established that the hallucinations are what they are and you can't trust what you see. But to pull what is essentially, it was all a dream sequence from the scenes with that exposition dump guy, when he's in the freezer, when she kills her mother, when all this happens, to undo that. And I know there's an in world explanation for it, so it's not as guilty as other movies where they just bring it out of nowhere. But at the same time, you've already established don't trust what you see. So in the realms of a twist, and especially in the second movie, and especially at times in this movie as well, they pull the you didn't really see that so often by that point that it was just a full-on shitting on everything that was seen before it. Because obviously, and you mentioned that we don't know, you mentioned when she's in the room with the Rosemary DeWitt character, her mother, that's when the hallucination begins. I presume you mean the full-on psychosis hallucination, because up until that point we are getting constant mini segments of that, like the guy with the bad skin in the hotel room, the people who are following her around in her hotel room, the dance segment when she looks away. I mean, it's been whatever about doing it to the character when she jumps to a full hallucination. We've been exposed to it constantly as the audience in smaller levels throughout the whole movie, to our viewer experience. And I do like the sequence in the hotel room with the crazy guy running towards her. That's a very good sequence. But don't give me a whole, it was all a dream sequence of everything meaty and everything shocking, like her killing her mother and her friend there. Don't just put that down to hallucination and pull the rug, which was never a rug in the first place, because it's hardly a twist. It hardly does anything in terms of the plot, really. It's just killing time and cheapening moments that may have worked earlier. I'm really not a fan of that type of thing where we get it didn't happen in any movie, let alone a movie that's showing us constant things that didn't happen at various points early on, to completely erase the visual sequence that we've seen before that. Yeah, so they're the things that I had a problem with while watching the movie. I think this movie is a really good idea, the character they choose to focus on is a really good idea. We often watch movies where it's housewives or wives in general or characters like this where no one believes them, and it's a no one believe you movie. Another trope that I don't like. But the thing is, what makes it interesting in this movie is that it's a very powerful person who is famous, that they've got constant fans. It's almost like with Kanye West, the way he's been losing his mind for years now. And if that was just a normal person on the street, they'd probably be sectioned. I mean, maybe not. Maybe not, considering that the funds they've cut, but people would be quick to call them mentally deranged or mentally disturbed. But because Kanye West has got so much money, and this thing they say about rich people is they're eccentric. Once you have money, you're eccentric. So it's a great person to follow. And there is a lot of things that can be explored with that. Even when she's losing her mind, it's not the usual kind of situation of, okay, let's send her off to the loony farm. It's people are scared of her. They're scared of her unpredictability. They're scared of her losing it because she still has power and status, even when she's getting powerless. And that's really good. And another thing that's good as well is, like you mentioned rightly so, that scene where the fans are coming to see her at the meet and greet, that's really good. And it always reminds me of a scene like in, what's that movie with De Niro? Oh my God, my memory. It's that Scorsese movie where he plays the talk show host. Completely gone from me now, but obviously Joker riffs on it a bit. What's that movie called? Oh yeah, King of Comedy. It's a bit like that when Jerry, whatever his name is walking through the crowd and there's people following him and he's almost being attacked physically, but in a mental way, because it's the people coming towards you and you not knowing whether they are going to take that extra step, whether they are going to get in your face, and it's just horrific. And I remember thinking while I'm watching this movie, I would rather be poor than famous. Now, I would love to have money that goes with the fame, and it's a great compensation, but I can't imagine everyone knowing who you are, everyone wanting access to you, everyone acting absolutely crazy and insane towards you. That's a great thing to explore with a character who is losing their mind, and a character that's not particularly likable as well, especially if we're to believe the scene where she literally drives her boyfriend off the road, who is also acting pretty crazy to her, to be fair. So it's definitely a genius person to explore, and it is the most interesting part of the movie, in my opinion, and it does add a lot of tension in terms of not so much the horror elements, but the psychological elements, where you just don't know whether the person that's going to come at you is this, I don't know, the supernatural being, or just a normal person who's absolutely lost their mind and is acting crazy themselves. There's a whole other thing to be talked about in this movie, is that people that lose their minds when they see you, just like she's losing her mind when she sees that supernatural being. It's it's all good stuff. And like I said, it's this movie's filled with good ideas. I wouldn't fault it for that, but just in its execution, it just let me down a lot, and just wanted to get out of the movie by a certain point. And again, I really like the idea of the ending as well. There's lots of things that I like the idea of in this movie, but just don't complement the movie based on my viewing experience. Like a perfect example of that is the scenes with the the dancers who are doing the choreography, who invade her room, and there's so many people in her room at the time. And of course, the whole movie, from the point of view of the pop star, is an invasion of space that she already has with the public. So now she's got an invasion of space on a mental level with the supernatural side of this as well. So again, good ideas, but that scene where all the people are in the room and they're spread across the floor, when it became a good idea is in the talking stage. In the execution and to be put into the movie, I don't think it works in its execution. Number one, it's not scary. Number two, some of the dancers are having a laugh that they're not pulling off. It's not the brilliant, iconic, psychotic, almost Joker-esque smile that we get from the people who slit their throat. Some of those dancers were just not pulling off their laugh, and it just seemed like, again, another thing that took me out of it, actually, because I almost could feel them holding in their laughter. One or two to the left of the frame, if you watch it, they're not really pulling off what they're meant to do, or maybe they are, I don't know. But again, this was just another detail that it's when you do something stylistically, and of course it looks stylish, it's well shot, all these things I can't fault, but it's just working in disservice of the movie, a lot of these things for me. And I feel like Smile, the first one, just everything that happens in that movie is working in service of the movie, in service of the supernatural, in service of making you scared. I think this is just style that nullifies and stifles things that if you were it's rich for me, but if you were more interested in scaring people and the horror aspect of your horror genre, then you would have done a lot of these things in a different way, and you would have concentrated on different things. Yeah, the ending of the movie is again a really cool idea, and I'm glad they did it, because it's meant to be a whole kind of, oh fuck, now the supernatural beings are going to attach to all of them. And again, that's a really cool idea, and that's, in a script sense, that's cool. But I think by the time I got there, and by way of a dream sequence which just appears on the stage, I was just a little bit pissed off that they had wasted 20 minutes of, oh well, this didn't really happen. And I understand the in-world implications of why it didn't really happen. But again, Smile 2 does this. I mean, Smile, the first one, does this, and this movie does this earlier on. So it's not like I'm against the conceit, but just don't do it in that way, in my opinion. So by the end, we get to that point, and it just, again, it undercut the ending, because it's just, I didn't really care by that point. And the other thing is, and this is another personal thing as well, I'm just not enamored with excessive gore in this kind of way, where the guy smashes his face with with the bat. I know it wasn't a bat, with the weights. And I know it's the genre, and if that's what you like, then you're thinking, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. It's like, ooh, like I get it. As someone who used to like and still like from time to time movies like Saw and things like that. But if you're not feeling it, it's just like it's long and it's not really doing it for your sensibilities. And again, now that's not a knock on the movie at all. I fully accept that that's 100% of a meeting and living in Croydon and constantly being exposed to absolutely horrible videos that show into my algorithm, that I am much more unsettled by that type of gore than I ever was. So it's nothing got to do with me. I know nothing got to do with the film, should I say, but that's just another thing that perhaps somebody would get from the film when they're watching this and like to see that extreme mutilation. I mean, gore is too trivial of a word, really. The graphic mutilation of faces. If you're not into that thing, you're definitely not here for sequences like that. And in the first movie, at least the mutilation was accompanied by real levels of scare. Whereas in this, I felt like, well, by the time we get to Saw 4, people want to see people getting their legs fucked up. Whereas in Saw 1, it feels like even though I'm still getting mutilation, I'm getting it very much in service of the plot and the vibe and the tone. Not just, oh well, this is what people want to see, but I fully understand that that's a me problem. But as I'm the one speaking, it does need to be clarified. The now fuddy-duddy who is sending this voice note. But yeah, middle of the road movie for me. Lots of good ideas that didn't work for me. It's probably the best way of describing this movie.
Hey man, just riding around a supermarket on my shopping trolley, picking up some late night groceries. Yeah, you know what, like not loving a movie, but thinking it has some good ideas, some things that impressed you, some, positive takeaways, but overall not really a fan of it. That's not too bad of a takeaway for a horror sequel. It's funny, like I'm as you said, I've like drunk the horror Kool-Aid more than you, and I can get a lot more out of these movies than you have. But certainly for many years, I've been like, why the fuck would I ever watch a horror sequel? Maybe the first one's good. The slim chance the first one's good, but then a sequel, forget about it. Yeah, I've loved this. I thought it was like actually better than the first one, but yeah, definitely. If you're not a big horror guy, then I think probably don't want to be spending too much time watching horror sequels. But yeah, interesting hearing your thoughts. I mean, obviously I disagree with some of the things, or well, disagree is not even the right way of putting it. It's just had a different experience with it than you did. I think one of the biggest kind of points of diversion between us would be Naomi Scott's acting, which again, I thought was spectacular in the movie. I think, I mean, you mentioned that like you could sort of, it wasn't really working for you when she was sort of doing the scared thing, like acting scared, which obviously she's doing for a lot of the movie. And like that, I didn't have an issue with that, but she has so many different things to do in the film. Like she has all of this, she's doing this whole celebrity performance, like acting out all of that experience of being like an under the microscope celebrity. And I thought and also like dealing with like post-traumatic stress and like addiction and stuff. And I thought she did a really good job for all this stuff. Again, like you said, there's maybe someone who like me who's a horror nut has an element of like watching her as like a final girl, or like what kind of studying her within pantheon of a certain like type of acting or whatever, that is just a different kind of paradigm that then yourself would just be like watching, it's just straightforward, just watching an actor in a movie. But yeah, I thought she did a brilliant job. Oh yeah, and you're quite right. Gallner does get run over at the beginning of the movie. I don't know how I forgot that. I think later in the movie, I was like, Gallner's still out there. Is it? Oh, they're saving him for the sequel. I was like, nope. Just completely forgot the fact that he got run over. And maybe that speaks to how desensitized I am to gore compared to you. No, I definitely feel like yourself that like as you get older, as I get older, I'm less keen on just like extreme violence. He made a good point of how, if it makes sense, if it's justified, like if it's kind of makes sense kind of narratively or whatever, then you're fine with it. But it's when you feel that it's just gore for gore's sake. Like you use the example of Saw 1 being like, it's a super scary movie. It's kind of like influenced by Seven and stuff. So it's very gory, but it kind of justifies it. And then you come back to the sequels and you're sort of like cheering on the gore rather than recoiling from it. I think to me, Smile 2 doesn't necessarily commit that same crime. I think the scene that you mentioned of the guy smashing his head in repeatedly with the weights would be probably the one scene that for me does that, which I didn't particularly like. I didn't think it worked that well as a moment, because I get that it's a hallucination, or well, it's not actually a hallucination, it's real, but I get that it's like he is sort of possessed, so he's not going to be acting normally. But just the sort of lack of movement of his upper body as he smashes the thing, like really heavy thing, full force into his head, kind of just made it too cartoonish. And it's obviously every time they do it, they're doing a jump scare in a sense, because they're doing that super loud noise. And yeah, it was one of the weakest bits in the movie for me. Obviously really liked the movie, and I thought that like pretty much everything in it worked well, so I was probably liking that more than you, but I think that I would agree that it's one of the weakest parts in the movie. One of your major complaints about the film, though, I think is definitely not something I was feeling, which is like you struggled with the "it was all a dream" thing. Now, just to be clear, "It was all a dream" is one of my most hated things. I mean, everyone hates that. Like it is sort of a universally hated plot device, or whatever, however you want to put it. And yeah, like that's definitely something I'm generally in agreement with. We've agreed on many movies about that type of thing, where it's literally "it was all a dream," or it's like, oh, it was a fake out, and actually you're just like kind of undermining what you've done. However, if the whole concept of your movie, like for like Nightmare on Elm Street or something, is "it was all a dream," and the whole concept of this movie, right from the opening scene, especially if you've seen the first movie, right from the get-go, you know, maybe not from the opening scene actually, but right from a very early point in this movie, even if you haven't seen Smile 1, it's clear that this is a movie about hallucinations, and that the stuff that we're going to see in the movie, like over and over and over again, is not going to be real. At that point, I think you can't complain, or well, you can, of course, you can do whatever you want, but like, I don't in any way feel compelled to complain about a specific instance of "it was all a dream" within the movie, because I'm like, well, yeah, it's Smile. That's what Smile does. So, yeah, I think you either surrender to this movie is "it was all a dream," which again, like I said in my previous voice note, is not my preferred. It's not like one of my favorite things or anything, but you kind of have to accept that from the get-go as just sort of what this movie does. Just browsing some beers right now. Yeah, I'll pick up one of those. heading into the cinema for my second movie now shortly. So yeah, that stuff didn't bother me. And yeah, for the record, I was when I said like the moment just before she kills her mother is when we go into the final hallucination. I understand that the movie's had countless hallucinations before then. It's just that hallucination that is the final. I kind of look at it as this monster, this demon, its like MO is it'll get you, it wants to sort of distract you and toy with you, but ultimately it just wants to control you and distract you and turn you mad over the course of a few days, bringing you towards the point where it gets you to kill yourself in front of someone. And the fact that the delusions ratchet up and the fact that the final delusion is like massive and like kind of knocks her out for a huge period of time, that all sort of tracks. Like it kind of makes sense that the monster, the demon, wants to get her up on stage to kill herself in front of thousands of people. And I don't know, like that's the final few hours of that, or the final period of that, it wants her just completely knocked out. So it's just 100% in the driving seat and she's just completely unconscious of it all. It made sense that final hallucination was like a longer winded one. So I didn't feel like they'd done there was some sort of screenwriting cheap trick had been pulled on me. Obviously it is a twist and it is a trick, but I felt like it made sense in universe, if that makes sense. And yeah, beyond that, I mean, I think, as you said, we feel very differently about it. It's good that you got one good movie out of this franchise. I presume you're not going to be back for part 3, or maybe you are. I think we'll both be there for movie number 1 by this director that isn't a horror movie, because that's definitely an attractive prospect. But yeah, for this one, it worked for me. And yeah, what more can I say? It's a classic case of horror fan and non-horror fan. I think we've been down that road before with westerns, where it's doing more for you than it is for me. But yeah, I'm glad that you got a few little morsels of entertainment out of that anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I am a horror fan as much as I'm a fan of any movie in most genres. Um, I'm just not a horror fanatic, and I think that's the difference. Like the only genre I'd say that I'm not a fan of, like that I actively wouldn't seek out movies from, is probably musicals. But just to piggyback up on something you said there, I don't think just because something works in world, or sorry, makes sense in world, I don't think that is a good enough reason to justify anything if it doesn't work in that world. For instance, in a superhero movie, there's probably going to be someone flying through the sky. If you give me 20 minutes of someone flying through the sky and it's not compelling, then it doesn't matter that it makes sense for him to be doing that, because it's just not a good use of his time, Superman's time. Or like an action movie, there's going to be a lot of action in it, but if that action isn't good, then it doesn't matter that it makes sense to be machine gun fights on a blimp. So I feel like with that dream sequence, the movie is already dragging. You've already made use of shorter ones before. Sure, it makes sense for a longer sequence, but it's already been established that I think a 12-hour, 24-hour time span had occurred, and the main character thought it was a few minutes. I think it was her mother that comes to knock on the door or something like that, and way more time has happened than she thought. So it's just because it's distracting for longer while this stage setup is happening doesn't mean we have to feel like it's longer. And my main problem is that it's so uninteresting when the guy is strapping her down. She has to go find him. They have to go to a freezer. So you're putting me through that scene, which is so boring and so almost a standard thing to do now when you're getting rid of demonic possessions and death, or it happens in the TV show I'm watching recently, almost scene for scene. Like, if you're going to put me through a scene that turns out not to be real, at least put me through a scene that's good. Like the scene where she stabs the mother and she thinks she doesn't. That's a good scene. Like, put me through more of that, but then don't continue on in the car and going to this place and then say, oh, by the way, remember that thing that was dragging on and added like 20 minutes to the movie? Yeah, that was a dream. That's my problem. That's my problem as much as anything. If you give me a really cool like sequence and a much shorter sequence as well, that's fine. I will say that a horror sequel is an underrated subgenre of a subgenre of a subgenre. There's been some good horror sequels out there, but I know horror isn't as homogenous, and genres aren't homogenous in general. But I'm gonna have to try and really give horror movies genre allowances while I do these things with you. I do it in slasher movies to an extent, even though it still drives me mad when people do stupid things. I can kind of say, okay, well, that's what you get. But there's so many different type of horror movies, and maybe you've put enough feel time in that you have almost got to nail down each and every subgenre of horror you switch to, that, oh, well, this is going to happen, that this is going to happen, that this is going to happen. And I don't have that. So the things that I'm coming up against, I can't put them in the pocket of that genre in the way you can. I can do it with slashers for sure, and I can do it with certain aspects, like where people are going to make absolutely stupid decisions, and it's going to really overindulge the ending when it should have been an ending, and then someone doesn't die, and those two things I expect. But maybe there's a lot of other things I need to expect and I need to hone in on so that I can roll with the punches, because I roll with the punches in an action movie. If someone makes a phrase, if someone does that, I like, there's a lot of goofy stuff in action movies that I can be like, well, yeah, of course Arnie's going to say that. It's an Arnie action movie, and I'm able to give that courtesy to a lot of genres. I probably don't know about enough of the things that I'm gonna come up against at the level you are, but maybe I'm gonna start making a list or looking out for it, so I can be like, oh yeah, when that happened, well, of course that was gonna happen, so I'm cool with that, and then I judge the movie on more its genre. Maybe that's what I need to do.
Hey man, just final leg of the night now, waiting at the bus stop. Watched 2 movies in the cinema, and gorgeous full moon out. You could hear a pin drop out here, so I'm speaking a bit quiet because sure there's a lot of people sleeping around me in all these quiet houses. Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I've definitely benefited from developing those kind of allowances, that level of leniency of like, yeah, this is a bit like shit in the context of other movies, but it's kind of just par for the course in like Hammer horror or Giallo or something like that. But for this film, I didn't have that. I mean, I just held this film up to like, at least consciously, I held this film up to like the same rigor that I would just hold a regular movie up to. I'm not saying this is the best movie I've ever seen or anything, but I just thought it was fantastic filmmaking, fantastic acting. And yeah, was really, really impressed by it. On the subject of it was all a dream thing, just because there's a logical in-universe reason for it doesn't mean that it's a good thing for you to watch. And yeah, I'd agree that that doesn't mean that it's going to be a good thing for it to watch. But the reason I brought that up is because we have always both hated the trope of it was all a dream. And I don't know about you, but for me, almost every time I've seen it, there hasn't been any kind of logical reason to do that in the movie. It's purely been like a cheap trick. Whereas this one, the entire, like literally the main plot of the movie, the entirety of what this film is about is hallucinations. And yeah, just like you as the audience watching things that aren't actually happening, and then her kind of breaking out of it and going, oh shit, that was just my mind playing tricks on me. So it's very, 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 very different thing when it happens in this movie compared to when it happens in another movie. It doesn't mean you need to like it in this movie. It doesn't mean it's good in this movie. But I brought it up as a response to when you mentioned in your voice note that you hate that trope of it was all a dream. Likewise, I hate it too, but because it's so handled so differently here, it didn't bother me. The reasons why it bothers me in other movies weren't a feature of this film. Now, we obviously disagree on the content of what you're getting, because when it goes into it was all a dream, I mean, it does that many, many times throughout the movie, but the time that it does it for a more prolonged period of time at the end of the movie, leading up to the finale, you thought the stuff of her trying to kill herself with that assistant guy in the freezer or whatever was terrible, and all that. I definitely wouldn't say it's the highlight of the movie or anything like that, but I still thought there was a great not car chase, but car ride sequence, fast driving sequence, whatever the best way of putting it is. The creepy location that she goes to was cool. Granted, not that much happened there, but then you get the cool emergence of the monster, the CGI monster, and the pulling apart of her head and all that. Like, there's a lot of good stuff there for me. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess there was just probably quite a few times during this movie where it was doing something good for me and it wasn't doing anything particularly good for you. And I think probably too many of times of that has led to the difference in opinion of us. But anyway, c'est la vie. Plenty more horror fish in the sea.
Your mailbox is full. Please delete new or stored messages which you no longer need so that new messages may be received.